Obviously we have one apology from Councillor McHugh. I'm pleased to see that she's continuing to do well, and we're hoping to have her back fairly soon. And just to say that I think it would be useful if the committee were to be able to express our best wishes to her for a speedy recovery.
Apology for Councillor Bissett as well.
Thank you. Any other apologies from
Yes,
any of our others?
we have an apology from Fiona Craig, the secondary teacher rep.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest, financial or non-financial, at this stage? No. We move to item 3, being the minute of the Education, Children and Young People's Executive held on the 4th of June. For accuracy, is there any particular issues? No, happy to agree.
Could I ask a question about the transfer of community halls? Are we going to receive a further report as matters progress?
Gary?
I'm happy to do that for the next meeting, yes. There's been progress. We're in the middle of the microphone. Yeah, we're in the middle of finalising the first 5 leases to be awarded, various stages of that, but it is positive, it is underway, and it's also imminent. But I'm happy to bring that report to the next meeting to confirm where we are in the overall position.
Okay, good. Thank you,
Okay.
Convener.
Thank you. Okay. Item 4 is the rolling action log. I think most things are either on the agenda or have a future date to come forward. Any particular queries in relation to that? No, thank you. And the next item is the membership of our executive committee. Colin?
Yes, thank you, Convener. It's simply a brief report inviting the committee to appoint the representatives that we've already met formally to the membership of the committee. So that's Ryan Farmer, Beth Wallace and Siobhan O'Neill.
Okay. As we've already met them, I assume the committee is happy to accept, and that we welcome them and look forward to their contributions. Okay, item 6 is the Devolved School Management Scheme issue of new guidelines. And that, Gary?
Thank you very much, Chair. The purpose of the report is set out in section 1.1, and the 3 purposes we intend to go over today. 3 recommendations outlined in section 2 before the executive today, and I'll return to them at the end of the report. Section 3 looks at the background, it looks at the DSM background in terms of 2 things: the national position. It confirms introduction in 1993, and 2 further reviews were carried out in 2006 and 2012. In terms of the government, they produced in September 17 the Fair Funding Review. This was in the Role and Action Log, and this actually is the finalisation of the update to the Role and Action Log. It was the publication of the DSM guidance notes that was concluded by that. Section 3.1 confirms also that the main aims of the Fair Funding Review in many ways are similar to lots of the things that we're doing in terms of fair funding. The Scottish Attainment Challenge, the Pupil Equity Fund, it's the empowerment of head teachers, and the closing of the attainment gap. Significant work, collaborative work, has been undertaken by all the professional associations and the unions to help co-produce the document that's attached to the paper today. It culminated in the publication of the document in June 2019. In section 4, it looks at a couple of things. It looks at the links to the Scottish Government strategies. 4 main strategies that has got almost an alignment to the Head Teachers Charter, the Attainment Challenge Fund, Education Reform, and the NIF, the National Improvement Framework. Section 4.2 outlines the 4 key principles that undermine and underline and apply to the DSM scheme itself. Section 4.3 outlines the key aims of the DSM guidance. One of the things that will be very pertinent to Falkirk is the linkage to the Regional Improvement Collaborative. I think that certainly we will be engaging with our collaborative partners as we go through the exercise to develop Falkirk's own scheme. I think there will be a lot of positive and collaborative work that will go on with the right partners to do that. Also in section 4.3 outlines the 8 areas where the guidance provides very useful advice and probably more relevant, some good examples of good practice. I hope members have noted when if they went through the guidance that Falkirk features very heavily, in fact more heavily than any other local authority in Scotland. It features 6 times in the examples of good practice in the guidance. And that's testimony to some of the good things that we do in Falkirk that often go unnoticed. So I'm very pleased to say that they recognise that in the final publication. Section 4.4, probably the main part of today, it looks at the proposal, how we propose to take forward these new guidelines. The proposals before the executive are the Children's Service would want to set up a DSM review group that would oversee the work and it would consult with all the relevant stakeholders as appropriate. The group would report to the Director of Children's Services, and our intention would be to prepare a further report to come back to this executive on the findings and proposals for a Falkirk scheme later in the year. Later in the year, it would be later in 2020. Section 4.5 outlines the timeframes that we will intend to work with the guidance. The Scottish Government plan to have all local schemes in existence by April of 2021. So it seems quite far away, but I think there's quite significant work that will be required to be undertaken. But at this time, we are totally confident that we'll be able to meet that deadline. Section 5 looks at the key stakeholders in terms of the consultation. There shouldn't be any surprises there. Head teachers, parents, other council departments, other councils, RIC collaborative partners would be in that, and the professional associations and trade unions would be part of that. The Scottish Government have also appointed a dedicated officer to oversee the DSM scheme, and we've had quite a few meetings and conversations with the officer, and they'll also be linking very closely with the professional associations, IDES, and indeed be working with COSLA as we go through the next year to year and a half as councils develop their own individual schemes. The legal positions outlined in terms of the underpinning the DSM has in terms of the Standards in Scotland School Act in 2000. The risk inequalities and sustainability and environmental impact aren't applicable to this particular report. And the conclusions are outlined in section 7. It's our feeling that the guidance strikes an important balance by providing guidance but also allows local authorities to adopt approaches that most importantly suit local needs. It's vital that whatever we do to set up the scheme is transparent, relevant, it provides flexibility where it's required, and probably most importantly, it's got to be light on bureaucracy. What we don't want to do is add any pressure or workload to head teachers or the teaching profession. So whatever we do has got to be bureaucratic light, and it's got also to make maximum use of the council's own systems as well. That being said, the recommendations before the executive today are outlined in section 2.1. Not to note the content of the report, to agree to the proposal outlined in section 4.4, and to request that the Director of Children's Services brings a further report to the executive to align it to the Falkirk DSM scheme with revised guidance in 2020. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Councillor Alexander.
Yes, Convener, thanks very much. I'm pleased with the recognition that Falkirk is now receiving from the national bodies that oversee the performance of the education authorities across the length and breadth of Scotland. The Devolved School Management Guidelines are very welcome indeed. Sometimes we were not very good at patting ourselves in the back or giving our officers the praise that they deserve, nor indeed the members that participate within this group, as well as the non-elected individuals who bring so much to this committee. So I'm delighted to move the recommendations contained in the report, Convener. The whole programme is well written. The paper is very easily digested, and that should assist with the schools as they come to terms with the changes. They're very much an evolutional process rather than revolutional, and the the evolution of the strategies of the Education Authority are certainly very welcome. It is important that we don't increase the workload of head teachers in particular, and I'm satisfied that the full school management proposals actually should assist that particular process. So with that, convener, I formally move the recommendations contained in the report.
Thank you. I'm happy to second the report and reserve the right to come back.
Just a question, convener. Gary, who's going to be proposed to sit on this DSM review group? Is it just going to be officers, or will there be elected members involved in that?
I think we would welcome elected member involvement and engagement at various stages. I think it's important that the officers, I think there's an element of technical things that's got to be done, but I think as we go through the process, I think we would have to give a regular update to members as to the progress of it before we get to the finalisation of the internal plan. So elected members, it's our intention we would be engaging them with regular briefings as to where we've got to as we go through the whole process. It is an evolutionary process, it's not been done before, and I think that's something that we would be happy to adopt and to take members through that process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other member? Councillor Reid?
Yes, I agree with much of what's been said, especially reducing the workload for head teachers. However, most schools, in fact all secondary schools, have don't know what they call finance managers, and I just wonder if some of the stuff can be transferred to them. In Appendix 2 there's some discretionary areas where you can either devolve them or not devolve them, and some of them seem quite small in terms of workload. Would we be considering a transfer of some of those to finance managers?
So I think it's a good point Councillor Reid raises. At the moment, we're keeping an open mind about it, but you're right, there are opportunities to change and reshape the way that it's resource managers that are based in our high schools, what functions they perform, and I think the exciting part of the project is that we'll have a chance to shape that in a better way. So we've got a complete alignment with the new scheme going forward, and we've also got resource officers that support our other schools. So again, it's looking at the balance of the workload between them to see the shift in workload between the school and the centre. And again, that's a challenge here. This, with empowerment and autonomy comes the move of the red line. How far do you want to push it towards? Do you want to push it towards the school to take full autonomous decisions, or do you want to have a happy balance? And I suppose that's the exciting part of it, because we don't know who we're going to be with that until we go through the technical aspect of talking to our colleagues about how they want to look at it.
Again, I would repeat the congratulations to Falkirk, having been noted several times. It speaks a lot.
I think we're leading with a good practice.
Yeah.
Reverend Rowland?
Yes, thank you, convener. I just think it's a well set out report as well, and I want to thank the team for the briefing earlier that helped us understand some of the questions that we had ourselves, and to echo the congratulations that has been already been voiced to the council for the good work it's recognised in the paper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Karen?
It was just with regards to the consultation. It says will involve significant consultation. Will the next report lay out a plan for that? Obviously, I'm interested in how you're planning to consult with parents.
What we'll be doing is we're taking some of the proposals to the parent forum and the regular meetings we have with parents to say, how do you want to be consulted in that? And that I think there's also a meeting on Thursday with parent groups. So again, it's very much how would you prefer to be engaging with us on this challenge? It's a challenge, we've all got to work together on it. So we've got an open mind about it, but that idea will be floated on at a meeting we're having on Thursday night to see how parents would wish to be engaged in it, rather than be prescriptive to say, here's how we want it to be, let's look at the views on it and let's come to a common agreement on it.
Okay. Okay. Happy to accept. Thank you. The Early Learning and Childcare 2020 expansion update. Gary, are you going to start us off?
Okay. Thanks very much, Chair. Showpiece. Well, it's a very positive report, I'd have to say, and I'm delighted to bring that through to the Executive today. Purpose of the report is two purposes that are outlined in section 1.1 of the report. There are 6 recommendations before the Executive today, and I'll return to them at the end of the report once we consider some of the key factors in the report. Section 3 provides a bit of background to it. The background is not really changed. It provides an update on the work that's been undertaken over a very, very busy period over the summer by our central teams. And you'll see why it's been very busy when we look at some of the work, the outputs that have been derived from that. Section 4 summarises some of the current positions regarding probably about 9 major projects. Very pleased to say in some of the main ones that Kinnaird was opened on time. Capacity for 200 children is a equivalent to almost a single stream primary school, to put it into context, with a capacity of 217. So it's a very large early learning and childcare campus that we have on site, and it was open on time. I have to bring to members' attention in terms of contract standing orders, the project for this, which is phase 1 of 3 phases in our Kinnaird expansion plan, was that we're reporting a £500,000 overspend on the project. And there's 2 reasons for that. Members will recall that the initial capital bid was put in to create a campus linked to our 600 hours of provision. So what we had to do, as soon as we had done that, the government then introduced 1140. So what we had to do was to do some design changes to future-proof the 600-hour provision, which is operating just now, to become 1140-hour proof. It sounds easy to say, but there was lots of technical challenges in terms of the internal infrastructure, the layout, the free flow of it. We've done that. That accounted, we'll have to add another about 250,000 from our early years capital money into the project. We always knew that we had to do it. We didn't know the quantum of how much was involved. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason for the overspend, accounted roughly £250,000, is outlined in section 4.1.2. Main reasons for that, when we had to do some removal of contaminated land, when we did some site investigation on site. It's very important that we do that right at the start. And we also discovered that we had to do some additional ground stabilisation work at the perimeter. If members have been up to the site, they'll see that it's quite a sloping site, but it was important to do that because the stabilisation grounds enables a view over a water feature at Kinnaird. So the outlook for that facility is fantastic. The children have got an open view over water. It is very good. The stabilisation allowed us to build the ground up to enable effectively a flat outlook over that land. Some of the other things that came out, mainly because it changes to technical standard that we had to comply with that we didn't know at the time, was technical standard changes to how we do the gas membrane. And also we had to do additional fire retardant work, treatment and cladding in line with the national recommendations. And these were the recommendations that came out from the Grenfell situation that happened. What we're hoping to do in terms of we expect to recover the 250,000 from the groundwork overspend from the remaining 2 phases of the project. Already phase 2, which was the internal works to reconfigure the previous nursery provision on site into a primary 1 provision, very much open plan. It really looks fantastic. There is an underspend on that area of work of around £140,000. So our aim is over the 3 phases to effectively break even that capital budget. So that's what we intend to do. And I'm quite confident that rather than intend to do it, we'll deliver on that promise over the 3 phases. Overall, for those who've been up to the site, it really looks a fantastic facility and one that everyone in Falkirk can be proud of. Some of the other key information in here is referring to the Calendar Park Business Nursery. I'm unfortunate to have to report that although we reported significant flood damage the last time, on inspection we've discovered that there's been some significant damage to the electrical heating system on site. So this work will require to be done, which means that the delayed entry to that site is now going to be in early 2020 to enable us to get the electrical heating system replaced so that it's working as we would want it. One of the other key decisions that are before members today is in terms of the Woodburn Early Years Centre. You may recall that we've decided that the centre will be demolished and a new establishment will be built on site. To enable us to do that, we're asking permission to decant the existing staff and the children that are in Woodburn to Queen Street Nursery by the October break to allow that work to commence. The only way to do it is to get people out, to enable us to demolish it and to create a safe environment in doing so. So the decant is the only way forward to deliver on site at that particular project. Victoria Primary School, pleased to say, has been completed. And the rest of the projects in terms of Kinglass, Cairn Primary School and Cairn Shore, the design work in brief is almost completed with these, and we're about to move to the procurement tendering process on them. The tendering process, we are doing a few tenders together under one of the national procurement framework agreements, which already demonstrates best value. So we're doing that as a collective and consultation and conjunction with our colleagues in development services. Section 4.2 gives an update on the remaining overall phase 3 programmes. I'm very pleased to say that in terms of the delivery of it, the 8 projects that were delivered for August were all delivered on time. 444 additional 1140 hour places have now come in to the estate. At the time of writing the report, and it shows you that it is a virtual report, the Bonnybridge Early Years Centre wasn't open. It is now open. So in addition to the 424, we've now got another 108 1140 places that are now contained within our early years estate, and that's a very positive message. The remaining phases and the remaining properties in phase 3 are outlined in 4.2 in terms of when we expect to be able to open them. Section 4.3 gives an overall summary of where we are. At the time of writing the report, it was 23 establishments delivering 1158 places. It's now 24 when you include Bonnybridge, 1266 places. And it proves that it is a real-time project and things do change on a daily basis with it. 4.4, the main area of work that we're going to engage with the private providers, our funded partner providers now, is 2 things. We've got to require a contract to be in place with them for August 20 for them to contract with us. The 2 key elements of the contract is an element of quality, alignment to quality, and also we've got to agree a sustainable hourly rate, which is a link to the requirement to pay the living wage. Those discussions have already started, very positive discussion with the funding partner providers already, and we're going to move forward in the coming months to enable us to reach a conclusion and agreement on the sustainable rate and to also reach a conclusion on the contract itself. 4.5 outlines where we are with the rollout of the Marvellous Mealtimes in Falkirk. I'd have to say that on a national level, this project's receiving national recognition and attention, and lots of councils have been out to see just what we're doing in Falkirk in terms of moving this initiative forward. Very pleased to also say that part of that, we are now delivering 2 baskets of fruit a week to each nursery establishment to support that initiative, and that's now in place. 4.6, officers are currently working on the changes to the emissions policy, and that will be completed later this year, and a report will bring back to this committee which will look to change the emissions policy in line with the early years expansion programme. Section 4.7 outlines the phase 4 projects. Very pleased to say that we've already had meetings with the head teachers that are involved in those phase projects already to discuss with them the plans, etc., and to answer any questions they've got on it, and that liaison will continue throughout it. Success stories outlined in 4.8. 157 staff have been recruited to permanent posts to support the establishment to date. We've already started the recruitment phase for the October 19 to April 2020 programme now, so that number will increase fairly significantly in the coming months as well. 4.9 outlines some of the work we're trying to do to improve communication, mainly around developing website and better access to the website for parents so they can see what's going on, and we're doing that work in conjunction with some corporate colleagues just now. Scottish Futures Trust, the Scottish Government, ADES are all involved on a regular basis with communication, and the Government have asked for a recent update to be completed under the 1 year to go banner, and that was submitted to them for information in early September. One of the proposals before the Executive today is outlined in section 4.10, and it's around the early years childcare centres. Members will probably know these centres operate effectively all day, roughly all year round. They're operated and run by a separate management team, that although they may be co-located to a primary school, they operate on a different management scheme, but nonetheless, they'll have the normal transitional arrangements in place. Officers feel that it would be good if those centres were given their own unique and individual names, given that they will be operating out of term time and they are distinctly different from schools, and they also are inspected differently by both the Care Inspector and Education Scotland. So if members agree to the proposal to conduct a consultation exercise to give them individual names, we'll bring that forward and we'll do the consultation in the normal way. So that's one of the proposals that before the Executive today. Very pleasing 4.11, the decision to reduce the snack charges for parents has been done. That's been implemented from August of 19, and that supports the poverty agenda that's very much high in the Council list of priorities. In answer to a question, I think it was Councillor Nimmo that has raised for some information at a previous meeting around annual cost of providing meals. There's a table also in section 4.11 that outlines the cost of providing the snacks and meals across our early years establishments. I would have to say that this is it's a best guess just now. It's an estimate because at the moment we don't quite know what the demand and uptake will be. We'll be monitoring that as we go through the whole process. But it's expected to cost about £1.43 million just now to provide those free meals and snacks that we've spoken about. And that also includes the food provision that I mentioned earlier. All of that money is already included in the financial model and is affordable to Falkirk within the revenue costs. 4.12 is looking at the central support team. We've reviewed the central support team and there has been a significant lot of work going on in the central support team, and what we need to get over the final hurdle is 2 more staff. 1 member of staff to engage with the private providers, the third sector, mainly to look at the contracting arrangements going forward, to look at the sustainability, to give us some support to continue that work and be dedicated. These will be 2 temporary posts for the duration of the project. And the second post is really to give us a bit of support around the technical design and project management. There's lots of projects, which means people are out on site all the time, and we really need 2 more staff just to go over that final hurdle because we've got significant work to do and challenge in the coming year. The estimated cost of the 2 posts are outlined in section 4.12, 80,000. I'm also pleased to say that revenue resources are already available in the quantum of funding we've got to provide for those 2 additional temporary posts. We certainly would value your support to agree that recommendation today to take some pressure off some of the central team, Carner team, that have done a fantastic job over the summer. Consultation, there's nothing changed there from the last report. And section 6 confirms the quantum of resources that are available in terms of capital and revenue funding, and it also confirms that the overspend that we reported in Kinnaird can be met from the monies that we've got. In terms of the legal risk, they're the same as we've always reported, as indeed are the qualities, although we have mentioned the alignment to the Council Poverty Strategy towards a fairer Falkirk is important for the snack charge removal. And also, as part of that equality thing, that we are looking at those children that need additional support, children who have got disabilities that need additional support. We're going to carry a bit of work to see what additional support they require to be put in place at our establishments. In conclusion, very positive so far. However, there's still massive infrastructure work and challenge that lie ahead in the final year. We do need the extra 2 staff to help provide that temporary support just to get us over the line. That being said, the recommendations before the Executive today are outlined in section 2 to note the overall content of the report, to note the updates given in the projects outlined in section 4.1 and 2, to agree that the Director progresses the decant arrangements at Woodburn Earlier Centre as outlined in section 4.1, to note the reasons for the overspending costs incurred at the Kinnaird Earlier Centre and to agree to the proposals to address them, to agree that the Director of Children's Services progresses a consultation exercise regarding the names of the earlier centres and brings back the summarised findings back to the Executive Committee, and to agree that the Central Support Team can recruit additional temporary posts as detailed in section 4.12. Happy to take any questions with Karen.
Okay, thank you. Gary, Councillor Alexander.
Yes, Convener, this is an excellent report. And you're right to describe it the way you described it. the work that's been undertaken, both in terms of volume and quality, has been absolutely unbelievable. In terms of the quantity, the big concern that members had was the ability to deliver the entire scheme to a timescale that was going to be suitable to the Scottish Government. But it shows you, I think, that when national and local government work together, then we can produce results that show that the professionalism within local government is there and can be matched by the drive and for this particular type of programme by national government. So I'm delighted with the corroboration that has gone on between two tiers of government, and not just corroboration, but I think an understanding of what the shared agenda is. And the shared agenda is about better services. It's about the providing a service that people can make use of as they see fit themselves. There's no compulsion on individuals going forward for the maximum that they can go forward for in terms of time. There's no compulsion, so that allows parents to judge for themselves just exactly what's required to meet their needs and the needs of their children. With regards to some of the aspects of the report, convener, I'll be parochial just for a few minutes and just say that I welcome the completion of Victoria Primary School and the commitment that's to replace Woodburn. Woodburn is very much associated with that particular community down there and has very strong bonds to the community. The other aspects of the report which are particularly welcome, in relation to the meal, the fantastic meals, and the provision of snacks. Many of the kids that come forward now to what used to be the lunch clubs, the breakfast clubs, we're looking for snacks rather than a breakfast, and require a snack in order to ensure that they have something in their stomach for the lessons ahead, and to provide these the way that they're provided now is very welcome, because it's a small part, but it is an important part because it sends the right message out in terms of dealing with poverty and the scourge of our community still. So we welcome the report, convener. I hope that members will take the credit for the way in which the matter has been handled by the committee. The concerns that were expressed at first have all been addressed, and that's something that's important. And even when we have what might be a blip in terms of the overspend, we have a solution to that put forward in the same report, which is all very welcome and will set a precedent for future. I don't know whether it's Gary Twist or Oliver Greenhorn, but I think his appeal for more is justifiable, and I don't think anyone around this table would grudge the request that's been made by the department for 2 additional members of staff. There's still a tremendous amount of work to be done, not just to complete the introduction of this programme, but also in terms of the management of the programme when it's fully up and operational. So as I say, I don't think we can grudge the department 2 extra staff members. So with that, convener, formally propose the recommendations contained within the report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nutter.
Again, I'll second the report. We'll come back in later in the debate.
Okay, I think the issue of individual naming of the early years facilities will help maybe give identity in particular with the community. So I think that's something that would be welcome, and it would certainly look to involve the community and the children in looking to create that identity. Okay, I'll open that up to members for any questions or comments. Councillor Nimmo.
2 or 3 things, Convener. Gary, can I take you back just to the issue of Kinnaird and the additional site investigation and excavation work that was undertaken? I take it there was a survey done before this was all entered into, and if it was, which I expect it was, what was wrong with the survey? Why wasn't it done properly?
Okay, like any major project, there would be a site investigation work, and it would normally involve quite a few boreholes being bored and drilled, and that report would come up. However, like any survey, they only do the boreholes in certain areas, and the area of contamination, which would appear to be a diesel spillage from the old hospital site, was contained to one area of the site alone. That it would appear that those site investigation works had missed at that time because the boreholes weren't there.
Are we able to reclaim any costs?
I think it's just one of these things that you do the site investigation work by an independent contractor that specialises in it, and the report itself, there was nothing wrong with the report. It just so happened that when the contractors were on site to do the work, they found what would appear to be a diesel spillage. I can't confirm it, that's what was reported to us, it smelled like a diesel spillage. So they had to do the additional work to remove that diesel spillage from the site before they could continue.
So what was the additional cost just for that particular problem?
The additional cost for that problem was probably around just under £200,000.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's not that unusual in building works of this
It's not,
nature,
no.
and it can happen from time to time.
We've contaminated land fines on a lot of sites, and again, the legislation is now quite clear that you have to, once you identify it, you've got to take steps quite rightly to remove that, and that's what we've done to make sure the site was completely clean.
Okay, I'll move on to the next point I was going to make. 4.8, it mentions the workforce and the recruitment and development. Previous reports have detailed the use of registered childminders, but there's nothing contained in this report.
That's been ongoing from the previous report. As we phase in 1,140 hours, we're working with Scottish Childminding Association to bring on board more childminders in each of those local areas. So we have brought on more childminders in terms of the delivery for August 19. We're sitting at about 35 childminders in total now, and we're just about to embark on inviting the next phase in for more childminders in the areas for phase 3B, C and phase 4.
Right, okay. My last point is just in relation to the overall funding. Obviously in times of austerity, we're constantly having to cut budgets. The money that we're getting from the Scottish Government, is that going to continue? And will it continue to be ring-fenced, or will it just be part of our revenue budget in future years?
Okay, I think it's a very good question, but certainly what we've got here is in the main, it's a ring-fenced budget just now, and that will be ring-fenced until the full year effect is concluded, which is in the year 21-22. After that, we don't know what will happen to it, but certainly at the moment, the expectation is that it would be ring-fenced in the quantum that's been agreed just now. So every council is working with the quantum money they've got for both revenue and capital. We're confident that we'll be able to deliver the project within those two funding streams we've got. Once the capital money has gone, it's gone. But certainly the revenue money, the expectation is that yes, whatever we've got in 2021 will be continued and perhaps mainstream going forward.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
Yes, excuse my ignorance, but once a nursery is built, can it only be used as a nursery?
Good question.
If you know what I mean, if it's not being used in the evening or it's not being used in the summertime, can it be used for general community use?
Okay, I don't know whether that's been considered.
I think it's a very good question. Indeed, the Scottish Government grant didn't allow us to build in any bespoke community use because obviously, if members will remember, the early quantum money was quite short. So effectively, the government were quite clear, if you wanted to build any community use into it, then you had to fund that council to fund that themselves. Notwithstanding that, there are some builds that could be perhaps used for community use, and they may have space and meeting rooms, etc. in it. At this stage, we've not really explored that fully. Our focus now is really to get the infrastructure on the ground, but we're happy to look at that going forward to see what the possible is.
Provided you provide higher chairs, I take it.
Obviously, we'd have to make sure that whatever route wanted it, it was suitable for their own individual use, and if it was higher chairs, maybe that may attract a slightly extra charge.
So is that particular use being looked at seriously then?
Yes.
It is? Right.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah. And that will be subject of a further report, perhaps?
I'm happy to include an element of it in the next report. It's something that we've spoke about, but there's quite a few things we speak about just now that we've just not had the resource to do it. So, and again, this is part of the request for 2 additional support staff to help support the overall work of the team.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, Cam.
It was just with regards to the Woodburn site, just about decanting staff and children to Queen Street. I'm not familiar with how close, we just did a quick Google search, but has there been a consultation with families about the impact, given the distance between the 2 sites?
We consulted back in December 18 in terms of the provision for that whole local area for Woodburn, Victoria Primary School and Queen Street, and that was the preferred option, was that Woodburn would be rebuilt, and that always did have an implication of a decant during that time. So parents who were involved in that consultation will be aware of that. Locally, in terms of distance, it's I don't know if you've had a look, but Woodburn is in sort of sits behind where the football stadium is, and Queen Street is right at the back of the retail park. But there are also options within Victoria Primary School for if parents don't want to use Queen Street. There are options to use Victoria, or indeed any of our other provisions. But we do expect most of them to choose the Queen Street option.
Just to give you reassurance, Can, they are very close. There's a triangular between Victoria, Woodburn and Queen Street, and they're all easily within walking distance. Okay. Councillor Murtagh?
Yeah, I mean, I think consultation and discussion with all stakeholders is something which is, indicative of the whole project, the whole early years expansion. And as you mentioned with Kinnaird and the flexibility that has need to be built into how these projects have been delivered, I think has been one of the great strengths of the department, delivering and planning the future projects, consulting with parents and communities, but also with the staff who know very well the establishments and know the plans and the evolution. And obviously, as 600 went to 1140, and as different things at Kinnaird, for example, with early years and where primary expansion, and that's been, I think from my point of view, particularly as a local member, really welcome to see how adaptable we can be with our plans and really look at what are the needs of the community, not this is our fixed idea, this is what we've planned, this is what we'll deliver and somehow we'll make it fit. Actually delivering what is needed and being able to adapt it. And I look forward very much to the evolution over the next couple of years, particularly, seeing Kinnaird and Inchlear in my own ward. But as parents understand the vision that we're, of what we're trying to achieve across the whole council area and in their local area, I think that consultation element, it's critical, because clearly I don't think any of us should underestimate the scale of this project. It's easy to come, every other time we come and we see a paper and we say this is the update, the incredible amount of work that's actually being planned and delivered. I think all staff deserve praise for that, and I think certainly, having visited Kinnaird on the day before opening, I was very, very impressed at how quickly it was able to be finished and turned around. I think all members in that project have our thanks. I have also been given a guarantee that I can come and play whenever. So I think, that counts as community use, councillor, I think, definitely. But I think what I would say in terms of from the Childminding Association, I know we've had a lot of conversations on that, and that feedback has been positive in recent times, that it's another indication of this is a massive change for parents, for childminders. The communication is vital. understanding that we're not rolling out everything now in one big bang, and that what we're working towards is going to be crucial. So I think we all know that that can be improved upon, and that can be you know, the evolution of getting that information to parents, and particularly new parents, and those who already had children at school, and now it's going to be different. That's a challenge, but I think, given that we know that challenge and we're working towards it, I'm very pleased with the progress and the listening that the department have been able to quickly adapt, so that we can make sure we keep on that right track. So thank you for your hard work over the summer in particular.
Thank you. Councillor Munro. Excuse me.
Thank you, Convener. I have a couple of questions. Regarding workforce recruitment and development, we've hired 157 people to date. How many is this project going to need in total, and how far down that road are we?
Our total figure of staff that we have predicted is around 400 full-time equivalents. And that includes, in part of the workforce development, our modern apprentices and our early learning and childcare assistants that we have brought on, and we are currently in the process of training them to become qualified early years practitioners. So we see them as our workforce for the future, as well as working really closely with our local college, and they've increased their intake of students that will be qualified by August 2020 as well.
So this is an area where there are constraints in terms of the number of people available at the moment.
Well, up to date, we haven't had an issue in terms of the volume of applications. Certainly, our early learning and childcare assistants positions are very, very popular. They are 16 hours. They are offering real flexibility for parents to be able to return to work or return to training. When we were recruiting our ELC assistants over the summer for 16 jobs, we had 197 applications. So at the moment, I'm not concerned about the demand for our workforce. We are getting a huge amount of interest in our Falkirk establishments.
Thank you. On the question of the money follows the child, and we now have a number of establishments open, how is this pattern sort of playing out? Are people choosing to use a nursery close to them, or?
Again, it varies on the parental demand, and that's exactly what our focus has been, is offering that flexibility for parents. So when parents understand what that offer is in terms of a blended approach, if they so wish it, we've got a real vary of uptake. So we do have parents choosing to go to the local primary or the nursery class attached to the primary school within their catchment. However, given the different models that we offer, it may be that they need extended day, extended year. So our admissions team are working really closely with parents and with staff to explain what their options are in terms of either blending with a private partner, blending with one of our early learning and childcare centres, or indeed the use of childminder. So we have quite a lot of children who are taking up that blended flexible care in order to meet the parents' working demands.
Thank you. And on the question of food and meals, whilst I understand the reasons for going down this road and things, we are hearing that in a number of schools and establishments that there is a large amount of waste, and is there some strategy to address this?
So as part of the rollout of Marvellous Meal Times, we are constantly reviewing that and assessing that. So Gary mentioned the provision of fruit just now. So we started that at the beginning of August, or the beginning of term. We've asked all our establishments to come back to us by the end of September to report to us, has there been any waste? What have you done creatively in terms of, have you used the fruit that we've provided to offer baking activities for children? So if there is, when that's reported back to us, we'll work on that over the October week. and we'll adapt that if need be to reduce waste. We're also working closely with our catering colleagues to audit how much waste there is. And as we move to fully roll out of Marvellous Mealtimes, where children are snacking and maybe grazing throughout the day, the need for meals might not necessarily be as great, and we'll adapt that with our catering services.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. John?
Just wanting to ask about the role of the teachers in these establishments, and if it's consistent across all establishments. Just out of interest as into if there is teacher input in these establishments, or if it's in some establishments or none at all.
Just to say that the establishments, there is no teachers allocated to any of these early years establishments. There are other professional staff in terms of early years officers, senior early years officers, principal early years officers and head of centres that manage that, along with the early years assistants as well. But there is, however, we've got a central team that offer the peripatetic support for teacher input to them when required. We've also made sure that all of the establishments, if it's a nursery class in a particular school, there'll be a transition and there'll be arrangements that will be very much part of the included in the whole school ethos under the head teachers management. The earlier centres, etc., don't have that. They're independent, standalone centres, and they've got their own management teams, professionally qualified. But the key here is that there has to be transition arrangements. There's got to be alignment with the school, local schools, as we go through this process. So we see it as very much an aligned process in terms of making sure that we produce quality and give good quality input to children's play and learning as we go through it. So there will be some teacher input, but in terms of the earlier centres, there's no teacher allocation directly allocated to it, but there is peripatetic support for teacher input if required from central resources.
Thank you.
Okay. If no one else, we're happy to accept the report. Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to Forth Valley and West Lothian Regional Improvement Collaborative Progress Report. Robert.
Thank you, Convener. And could I begin by apologising for not giving David Mackay's apologies at the start of the meeting. He's representing the service at a digital awards ceremony. The report in front of us is an update report. The last report on the Regional Improvement Collaborative was at the end of January. And at that point, what was intimated was some things that we were waiting for to happen. One was around the level of funding support that we're going to get from the Scottish Government to support the work of the Regional Improvement Collaborative. And the other thing was waiting on a bit more information on the reorganisation of Education Scotland and the development of their regional teams to support the work of the RICS. So paragraph 3.3 sets out that we now have met our regional Education Scotland lead officer. There's been a couple of meetings with the 4 directors of the councils, and there's a meeting arranged for later this month where all of the officers that are involved from the 4 local authorities will meet with all of the officers that are being appointed from Education Scotland. Education Scotland have organised themselves across the 6 RIC areas. In our case, they will have something of the order of 15 different officers, and they will work with us on a variety of aspects of our plan as set out in paragraph 3.6. Paragraph 3.6 indicates what it is that we are asking of Education Scotland and the support that we would wish to have from them, and that work is just about to get underway. The Scottish Government funding support came through almost a year ago now. We got £900,000, and during the course of the tail end of the previous session, what we were involved in doing was identifying staff that could be seconded from schools across the 4 authorities to develop our own RIC improvement team. And paragraph 3.9 sets out a number of different posts that have been appointed from Clackmannan, Stirling, Falkirk and West Lothian. You can see there that we've got quality improvement officers for literacy, numeracy, continuous lifelong professional learning, data analysts, performance officers, and they are now in post and they're now working across the 4 council areas directly at school level with staff on the ground, as well as leading the various work streams that have been reported previously. Once these staff were in post, we finally had an infrastructure that could begin to deliver on the ground. So paragraphs 311 to 314 cover a variety of different activities and events and engagement that has happened over the course of recent months. We now are in a situation where staff in our schools know about the Regional Improvement Collaborative. They've had an opportunity to both contribute to it and to make asks of it in terms of what it is that they're looking for by way of support at school level. We've established a variety of cross-regional groups, reference groups of head teachers, deputy head teachers and so on. And there's ever more activity that is arranged. We have head teacher meetings for both primary and secondary involving all 4 councils, and a variety of different work streams that have got representatives from all 4 council areas. We are at the stage now where we are submitting what will be our 3rd plan, our phase 3 plan. A draft of that was submitted to Education Scotland earlier this month, and what will happen thereafter is there will be further discussion between Education Scotland and the lead of our RIC in terms of the suitability of the plan, the resourcing of the plan, and the further support that will be required to deliver on that plan from Education Scotland. So we're in a situation where I think there's much more clarity than there was when I last reported on this in January. We certainly feel that we've made an awful lot more progress on work on the ground, engagement with staff, and beginning to add value to the various activities that our schools are pursuing. And we're now at the stage where this isn't just an idea of sharing and working together, but it's actually now happening on the ground. Staff are working together. We're beginning to see the benefits. Still a long way to go before we've got a fully functioning, I would suggest, collaborative model, but we're certainly beginning to move at considerable pace, and I think the phase 3 plan will allow us to support that work further. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Councillor Alexander.
Yes, Convener, can I ask the Director if he believes that overall there has been of benefit to having the collaboration?
I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, one of the things that happens when you engage either within your own authority, but when you engage with colleagues in other establishments and you look at practice in other establishments, what you're able to do is share and learn, sometimes agree on the best course of action for taking various initiatives forward and so on. One of the examples that we've talked about here is we are beginning to try and develop online and digital learning, some virtual learning. West Lothian have done a bit more of that than ourselves. We now have the opportunity to be learning from them, but also participating in some of their courses and models. There are things that Falkirk has done, particularly in terms of head teacher development and career-long professional learning, that all the other councils are now able to access. So there's a richness in sharing and learning, and sometimes doing things at scale across the four council areas. So it's, as I said earlier, it's a work in progress, but I believe that this method and approach to working together can only bring benefits for our schools and consequently for all of our children.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, Convener. There's always benefits from working with partners that previously we haven't worked with. There's always benefits from looking beyond our own borders for inspiration, for initiatives that would benefit the service. And equally, I'm particularly glad that our partners in the other three local authorities can gain something from Falkirk in terms of expertise and in terms of good practice. Because the issue of education is too important to be siloed. There has to be best practice spread throughout the country, and if by demonstrating the local authorities working together, we can improve the education of all of the children in this country, then so be it, and that has to be an objective. Obviously, our main target is Falkirk, and also our partners within the regional collaborative. But I certainly welcome the report, convener, and formally move the recommendations contained within.
Okay, thank you.
Just to second the report.
Right, thank you, Councillor Colley. Councillor Munro.
Thank you. I think there's some very strong ideas in here, and some sort of specific kind of goals you have, but there isn't anything in here which we can measure against. So we've got a really comprehensive report about, we want to use best practice, and we want to be creatively swiping other people's ideas and bringing them into our schools, but there's nothing tangible which we can specifically measure in here as to how well it's doing. And I have a concern also that, we've got Education Scotland, we have a collaborative, we have our own education department, and then we have heads who are supposedly sort of autonomous in their schools. So we've got all these tiers with which we have to, which are all doing their own things, and you've kind of got who is responsible for what. There is a risk of diffused responsibility, and whilst I can see what it is you're trying to do, it's not clear to me who does what, and how, and what are the goals you're specifically trying to reach, and how do we know when you've reached them?
Robert, do you want to respond?
I'll try. I mean, the goals of any education system is to find ways and means to ensure that our children get the best start in life, that their learning journey is as rich and as smooth as possible, and that the outcomes in their learning are as successful as they can be, so that they can become self-sustaining adults with the right level of qualifications, and they leave school to go to a positive destination. That's the journey, that's the aim. We have measures for those things. I think the question that you've posed is somewhat complex, in that arguably you're right, there are a number of tiers, but to be specific about it, the overall attainment profile of Falkirk, the responsibility for that lies ultimately with myself. At school level, it lies with each and every head teacher, and the same is true in the three other local authorities. So the responsibility for educational outcomes for Falkirk's children rests with Falkirk Council.
So why do we need a collaborative?
Well, the idea of the collaborative is to do what I've said already, which is that if we work together on certain aspects, and it's aspects of good curriculum design, good teacher training, good methods of approaching learning and teaching and so on, if there's greater consistency across a regional area on that, then the aim is that not just Falkirk's results and performance improve, but that happens in all three other areas as well. And one of the things that I think has been introduced into the system is that there is now another level, another tier, whereby we are certainly much more closely focused on what our neighbours are doing, and whether or not they are doing better than ourselves, and whether or not they have practice that we don't have. So that helps build a self-improving system.
It doesn't show in this report, however. I mean, clearly you're working with these other schools and local authorities, but it,
I mean, I think the other thing that, and we've debated this within the RIC, as we have here, we have a great many things on the go just now in Scottish education. We have the Scottish Attainment Challenge, we have the Pupil Equity Fund, we have the Regional Improvement Collaboratives, and we also have our own existing infrastructure and officers that work in David Mackay's team to try and support schools to improve and develop. So one of the things that I think is going to be very challenging for the system is if we say, there's where results at national level were in 2015 and there's where they are in 2020. What's going to be really challenging is to say, what was it that made the difference? Was it the Attainment Challenge? Was it PEF? Was it the Regional Collaborative? Or was it just that we've refreshed the profession and we've got a huge number of probationers coming through each year? So to put your finger on one thing that makes a difference is going to be challenging. I think what's important is that the sum total of all these interventions and investments and developments are that things are improving across Scotland as well as particularly within Falkirk.
but we don't know which ones work.
And you're right, you won't know which ones work, but what I can say is from my engagement with some of the staff and the head teachers and in general teaching staff, is they're welcoming the engagement and what the RIC's actually delivering for them, because it's presenting that professional challenge and helping them to just push themselves a little bit further in order to deliver the best possible education for our young people. And we have quite a young workforce, if I'm correct, and we need to look to be able to support them and allow them to develop in their professional careers, and that will benefit not just the authority but particularly children. And I think that's one of the areas that the RIC is really working well on.
Thank you.
Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, Convener. It was interesting just listening to what you were saying there about the various structures involved in this, Robert. I think you have to recognise that this is part of a much bigger picture. We might be talking about regionalisation at the moment, but my view is quite simple. We're going to end up with a national education body at some point, going down the same lines as the National Police Service and the Fire Service as well. It's all part of a centralisation agenda, and it's something that should be refused and knocked back, in my opinion. Just need to look at the problems with police and fire. It's supposed to have been set up nationally to save money. Has it? I'm not so sure it has. The other thing was, as far as the regional structure is concerned, is there still plans to have a regional board at some point in the future? Because that was discussed some time ago, I can remember.
The original proposition was around having regional boards, but what happened was that the matter was referred through COSLA, and COSLA and the Scottish Government reached an agreement about the way that the regional collaboratives would be set up and structured. The original proposition was that there would be a regional director, and COSLA took a collective view that they didn't want that to be the case, which is why the lead officers for each of the RICs are and remain employees of one of the participating authorities. I took that lead role in the first instance. Within our collaborative, we agreed that all 4 directors would rotate that role. So currently, Elaine Cook, my colleague in West Lothian, is leading the work of the regional collaborative, but the extent to which there's going to be any formal board structure, I think has passed, because of the agreement that was struck between COSLA and the Scottish Government.
I would also say that the Deputy First Minister has made it clear on very many occasions now that there is no intentions of taking education away from local authorities, and that's on record, and he's continually said that. And I would also suggest that you've misconstrued what the Regional Collaborative was there to do, because it certainly was not my understanding, and it's never been billed as a cost saving. It's about raising the attainment of our children. Councillor Murtagh.
Indeed, and I think that in raising the attainment of our children, the ethos within school about continuous improvement is essential. And as the Director was saying, one of the things that I have found is, as you know, the enthusiasm of the staff, indeed as the leader of the council was saying from consultation, that is coming across in leaps and bounds, not only to elected members but to parents and to the children, and that's what's most important. I was at a parent council meeting last night in which there were 4 presentations from members of staff. There were various initiatives that were coming forward. All of those initiatives were being introduced on the back of having learned from other professional development externally. The enthusiasm that was coming across from those teachers, and then when the pupils came out to present on them too, was clear to everybody. They wanted to share to the parent body what it was they were doing to improve the standards in the school. Now, 2 of those teachers who presented those papers last night, one of them was on the resilience programme that was coming forward, one of them was on digital leadership, one of them was on listening skills, and they'd all been courses that had been externally. 2 of those teachers have been probationary teachers within that school in the time in which I have known that. And that says a lot to me, because I've seen those teachers come in and come from learning and taking on, and to actually not being the people who are looking to others just for experience, but taking what they've learned and bringing it and improving it. And that comes from that spirit of continuous improvement. And I think that, to me, is what the Regional Improvement Collaborative is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about sharing best practice, finding the best practice that's there, and then bringing it to Falkirk, but also sharing the best practice that we've got with others. And I don't think that anybody can really disagree with the concept of that, and it's kind of alarming to see it turned into something else. I'm going to be shamelessly positive about the energy that was coming out from those teachers and from those pupils, and how in the self-evaluation and in the continuous evaluation that the school is doing, you can see, because of the way that the standards and quality reports are produced, because of the consultation each year with parents, that has to come from the leadership at the top saying, this is the direction we're going in, this is how we are supporting you, this is what we want to develop. And if we start putting the negativity on that or limiting that, then that's going to impact on the attainment of our children, and I certainly don't want that. I don't think anybody wants that from a council level. So I'm pleased to see that there's the detail within this report. I think there is detail about how and what we're doing within the report, in fact, but we are in the early stages of the Regional Improvement Collaborative movement in general, and there's a lot to be evolved and to be learned, and it's not going to be a model that's perfected on day one, and nobody would say that it was intended to be. But within our schools, I can see the positive effects of it already on how our staff are engaging with the work that they're taking ahead, and that's to be welcome. So to our staff who are working hard on that, as well as the officers in Sailork House, I think they deserve that recognition.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you in a second, Councillor Alexander, because Reverend Rollo was first.
Thank you, Convener. I obviously agree with collaboration as well, and great believer in iron sharpening iron. But picking up on some of the questions that's been made already, I just wonder, we had quality improvement officers in Falkirk that as far as my understanding was, some time ago, we had to let some of the posts go, and now we've got lead quality improvement officers. Is there maybe a flow chart? It would help us to see how all this pans out in relation to the local authorities with the collaborative, and that would be a question and a suggestion perhaps. And the £1 million or 900,000 almost that's come in, that's new money coming from the Scottish Government, that these are brand new jobs created. It's not people within the authority. It's brand new jobs that are being created for this to support the new collaborative, I presume. Am I correct in asking that question?
Well, no, the level of the posts that we have within the collaborative requires seasoned, experienced educationalists. So the people that have been appointed have been recruited from schools. So they might be principal teachers, they might be deputy head teachers, they might be head teachers, but they've been recruited from schools. So they are now in these posts, and what each local authority has done is backfilled the posts that they have come out of at school level. But they're being funded by that £900,000.
And a flowchart, is that possible?
Well,
get a visual picture of
anything is possible. I mean, I could certainly provide information on the Falkirk structure and the structure that we have within the NIF. I would need to obviously ask colleagues about the structures that are in the 4 other councils.
I don't want it to be laborious.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's reasonable to want to know that what has been added back in, if you like, to the system, given some of the previous diminutions in officers across the 4 councils. Certainly what we're hoping is that the £900,000 and the people that have been recruited from within, if we then add on to that the offer that's going to come from Education Scotland, then we ought to have far more people involved in this continuous improvement arena and agenda. I'll have a think about how I could present within the next report something that indicates some of the structure.
Yeah, it's just picking up on some of the things that's been said. Obviously, there are different political opinions on it, but it just looked as if there was shrinkage locally, and now that's been put in, but it's maybe put in at a different level, which provides what was there and maybe enhances what was there before, but the best practice comes out of it because we're working together, and maybe just seeing that visually would help.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, before I bring in Councillor Alexander, is there any other member, anybody else want to ask any questions? Okay, Councillor Alexander.
Convener, just very briefly, I think the non-politicians around the table really deserve a wee bit of clarification with regards to the issue of the centralisation. This is the educational executive. There's the compulsion on the local authority to have an educational committee, specifically at children's services. That is not the case with fire, police, never was the case with fire and police. This is a very different type of service. And incidentally, the issue of the establishment of Police Scotland and the fire service on a national basis was in our manifesto. That is correct. It was also in the Labour Party manifesto for the same election.
Okay, thank you. On that, are we happy to agree the report? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 9 is the Gaelic medium education in Falkirk. Robert.
Thank you, Convener. The report in front of committee today is one which does 2 things. It sets out the arrangements that are currently in place for how Falkirk Council provides Gaelic medium education to the children of parents who wish it. That has been provided for a good many years by accessing places in either Stirling Council or North Lanarkshire Council. The numbers of pupils that has been necessary for has remained relatively constant, certainly over the last 10 years or so, at around 20 pupils across the primary and secondary sectors. However, the reason that the report is here is that in 2016, within the Education Scotland Act 2016, a duty was placed on local authorities to promote Gaelic medium education and as well as supporting Gaelic culture and cultural activities. The question therefore arises that if every local authority is actively promoting Gaelic medium education, then it is conceivable that the places that we have historically accessed at Stirling and at North Lanarkshire may in future not be available to us, because if through their promotion they may well fill up the capacity that they have. So it is an appropriate juncture for Falkirk, I believe, to ask the question of our citizens to say, is there a demand for this? And if so, what is that demand? And the idea of asking permission to have a consultation is that if we can establish that the demand is as has always been, i.e. relatively low, then we perhaps need do nothing. But if, on the other hand, there's some indication that there is a demand or a growing demand, then we would need to reconsider our arrangements going forward, which would give rise to a subsequent consideration by the Council and obviously further reports to the Executive. So what I'm asking today, because I think it's an appropriate thing to do, is can we consult the parents of children who have just started nursery, i.e. the parents of 3-year-olds? The reason that we want to ask 3-year-olds and not older children is that people who already have children in school have already made their decision. So we're trying to get them as young as possible, try and establish, is there a demand, what is that demand likely to be, and basically take it from there. So obviously what would happen after we've done this consultation, we would report back to the committee on the findings, and it would then be for debate and discussion here as to how we might proceed if necessary.
Okay, Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener. I welcome this report coming forward precisely for those reasons, that we have the opportunity to assess what future demand might be in the area, and that this question obviously hasn't been asked of parents directly since the Education Scotland Act in 2016. And as it's outlined in the report, as a local authority, we have a duty to be promoting and to be supporting the access of our community, should they so wish. It's certainly very welcome and very clear within the report that no family who's requested to have their child go to Gaelic medium education has ever been denied in Falkirk. But we have to make sure that if demand changes, either in one direction or another, we have suitable arrangements to be able to meet our legal obligations. It's no surprise that there are many positive benefits to Gaelic medium education, but there are many positive benefits to all forms of a broad curriculum education offering. But fundamentally, we have to respond to local authorities to what we're required to do. And I think that the survey is very welcome, in that it gives the clear opportunity for parents to express what they feel are their needs, and for us to respond to that and plan around that. And I also welcome very much that within the report, it being made clear that I think it would be fair to say that there hasn't always been an awareness of it. It's very difficult to get information to new parents at all on whether it's enrolment dates or anything to do with information about starting school before they actually get into establishments. So it's welcome to see exactly what's outlined in the paper, that we do currently offer all our children to be able to go to Gaelic medium education, but given that information, a lot more clarity within the website, so that information is there for parents. So I think it's a fairly straightforward paper, that what we're asking is just really to be able to understand what the need is, find out that information and usefully collate that information and bring it back to committee so that we can plan for the future. And I certainly support the recommendations in the report and the detail of the appendix in the consultation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pauline.
I think just to second that, I think it's important that we consult with parents about what they want, and we need to hear from them and answer demand. So I think it's a very straightforward paper.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Could we qualify, how is this to be conducted? How are we going to gather this information, and is there a cost?
No, there won't be a cost. The intention is to essentially put the questionnaire into the hand of every 3-year-old parent as they arrive and deliver their child to nursery. Simple question: do you want to fill it in? Yes, no. If you do want to fill it in and please hand it back. and we will then collect them all up, collate them, aggregate them, and that will give us our information.
Okay. Okay, any other questions, or we're happy to agree the report? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 10 is the SQ attainment in Falkirk Secondary Schools. Robert?
Thank you, Convener. Committee will be aware that we bring 2 reports on an annual basis regarding attainment in our schools. This is the first of them. This is a summary of the attainment in the Scottish Qualification Authority Diet of Exams that was held in May and early June of 2019. I would stress, and it's set out at paragraph 3.3, that a much fuller report on attainment that includes all qualifications and all awards is presented to the committee usually in the March cycle, which provides the totality of the attainment and achievement of our children and young people. So you can see just at the top of page 88, there's a whole series of further accreditation and awards that is included in that second report, and this report is around SQA. In terms of SQA attainment, if I start at paragraph 4.1, you'll see there that the attainment for 5 or more awards at level 3, 5 or more awards at level 4 is static, the same as last year. But I think it's important to bear in mind that last year was the highest ever, so that has been maintained. You'll notice too that 5 or more awards at level 5 has increased, so the 44% that's mentioned there represents the best result that we've had in Falkirk. Paragraph 4.2 again shows within the table a relatively static position in terms of S5 hires. Members will be aware, and as will others in the committee, will be aware that media coverage at the time of the exam results was that the level of performance at higher was nationally down 2%. It is down a bit in Falkirk, but it's not down 2%, it's down 1%. So to some extent we have bucked the trend there. But you can see in the table that we've gone down ever so slightly at 1 or more and 3 or more, but we have improved at 5 or more. And part of the explanation, I believe, for that, and again I refer back to the report that will come later in the year, is as we have more and more children doing foundation apprenticeships and HNCs within our schools, that is the cohort that would normally be doing 3 hires, so those that would be involved in the 3+ or the 1+. So actually the number of presentations for hire are down a bit because children are doing other courses and other awards. So that provides a little bit of context. Attainment by the end of S6 is set out paragraph 4.3. And again, you can see that that is relatively static. I would point out again that last year we were at a pretty high level. The central row there of 31, it's gone down ever so slightly to 30. But the bullet points indicate an explanation of why we believe that is the case. Paragraph 4.4 sets out some information, just referring back to earlier commentary on quality improvement officers and quality improvement managers. What the team do immediately following the SQA awards is there are a series of visits conducted to each and every one of our secondary schools where their results are analysed. We bring what we call support and challenge to these meetings. We explore with schools and head teachers and other staff in schools areas where they've been particularly successful in different curricular areas, but also areas where results have gone down, courses that perhaps aren't performing terribly well, courses where the numbers of children selecting the course are going up or down or whatever. So there's a very detailed analysis and support and challenge meetings that happen as we speak. We're working through that process. It started in August and we finish it by the October week. We then have an overview of the subjects that are performing well. It helps inform the planning for our continuous professional learning programmes, and also it helps identify any additional supports that we need to broker and or provide ourselves to individual schools to bring about improvements. Happy to stop there and take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Robert, Councillor Alexander.
Yes, Convener, I take on board very much what the Director has said. I think that there's a temptation, I think within the communities in particular, to consider the SQA results as being the main indicator. And I think that's a big mistake. When we have this report prepared separately from the main report that we would receive in March, perhaps reinforces that belief that the SQA results are the most important factor. They are a major factor, but the breadth of the education that's available to young people is the important factor, and I don't think we get that from the report in this format. I would like to see these reports merged in a way that gives a rounded a summary, if you like, of the results. In terms of what we do have before us today, Convener, it is good news, and sorry, there's a series of conversations going on. It is good news with regards to the information that's contained within the report. Last year was an exceptional year, the best year ever, and we've maintained that. We're back to national trend, as has been said, in a number of areas, and that's to be welcomed, because the SQA results are important, and to see us holding our own in this is very good. And I think we need to, at this point, recognise the input of the teaching staff, of the support staff, and the pupils themselves, because without all of these parts of the jigsaw piecing together, we don't get the picture that we have at the moment. And it's very clear that we have a motivated workforce, we have a motivated group of pupils as well. So that's to be welcomed. The innovations that have come forward in the last few years, I think, are also a factor in this particular report. So I welcome the report, Convener. I look forward to the the fully comprehensive report that will come in March, where we can have an objective look at the Education Authority and its achievements across the board and across the full range of accreditations. Because you're right, we see it on page 88 at the top of the page, the additional qualifications that can be achieved other than just SQA is considerable. And when we look at, for example, where the skill shortages are likely to be within the industry and commerce, it's important that we recognise the role of foundation courses and the establishment of the employment for young people through that area of work. So the issue of what we face today is very good as far as it goes. But I believe there's an even better picture coming in relation to the March report, and also the Convener. I think the fact that we have the benefit of a new college that will open later on this year, and will offer opportunities for apprenticeships in a way that perhaps we couldn't envisage before. It's important that our educational services are up to scratch to provide what the college will need in future, and it's a very exciting time, and it's very rewarding that the council have retained very much so the progress that has been made in recent years, and for that, Convener, we've got to be very grateful.
Thank you. I think it acknowledges the fact that our young people have far more opportunities for choice and different pathways, and anyone that's attended any of the recent awards events and seen what our young people actually are achieving, and in collaboration with our partnership with Forth Valley College, you know, they would understand that, you know, that the breadth of what is available in qualifications now, and this is just a snapshot. Councillor Colley.
I think very briefly in second, I'd like to echo what Councillor Alexander said, and I think it's very important when these reports come forward that we celebrate the achievements of young people. We celebrate the achievements of staff. It takes a great deal of work to help maintain, increase and sustain the qualifications that young people in Falkirk are receiving. I think, again, I'm looking forward to seeing the report that talks about those other pathways and gives information about what our young people are achieving in that way. I think you know, qualifications in terms of helping young people to be ready for the adult world, and looking at 3.3 some of the things about enterprise and employability and leadership and volunteering and personal finance. There's a wide range of things that are really about preparing you for that, and as well as HNCs and foundation apprenticeships. So I think I'm very much looking forward to seeing that report.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Convener. I always approve of any member who seeks to find the most positive aspect in a report which has come from our excellent officers. And to that extent, I don't fall out with what David and Fiona have just been saying. But however, I do think it serves no purpose just to brush under the carpet some of the more not so positive aspects. And there are not so positive aspects in this report. It cannot just be swept completely under the carpet that there has been in certain areas a fall off in attainment. Now, Robert has suggested ways that the reason behind that, and no doubt the reason why in the later figures we should see more of a balance. But as it stands just now, yes, there's lots of good things about it, but I don't want it just to be seen as David said, unalloyed good news, because we can't just accept it all as good news. There are things here that are red lights to the service. Of course, the difficulty here is that we don't have much to compare it against. Now, in the dim and distant past, when I was on this committee before, I seem to remember that there used to be comparative authorities, and we compared figures with that. Is that my old age catching up with me? And I just imagine that was the case. But it certainly would be good if we could compare ourselves to other authorities, because I've no doubt that, you know, some of the reasons that you have given, Robert, also are affecting other authorities, and that would be good to have that highlighted, that it's not just us that are seeing a fall off in some areas, but it is a national trend.
Yep.
But as it stands just now, I have no way of knowing whether that's the case or not.
That is very clear front and central in the report that comes in March.
Yeah.
We used to have, well, each local authority used to have either 4 or 5 comparator authorities, and there was data that was published around how you were doing against your comparator authorities. What happens now is that there is information within the so-called insight data that gives us ourselves against national, but it also gives ourselves against virtual. And the virtual comparator is a mechanism whereby it is supposed to be as like us as you could have. And that is reported in the March report. The other thing that we're doing, just going back to an earlier report, one of the things that we are beginning to look at is aggregating data across the Regional Improvement Collaborative, and we've got quite a close eye on what's going on in West Lothian and Stirling and so on. To pick up on your point about it not all being rosy in the garden, you're right. This is aggregate data. There are 1 or 2 schools and or there are 5 or 6 subject areas where we are approaching that with considerable rigour. And if the higher results in a particular subject have gone down by quite a bit, then that forms the basis of quite robust conversations at individual school level, either on the basis of the whole school performance, but more usually on the basis of an individual subject performance within a school, where if something's gone down by 2 or 3%, then we're certainly asking questions about why has that been the case.
Good.
Thank you. I just say that while attainment last year was the best ever in Falkirk, we should not be sitting back on our laurels and leaving it at that. We should always continue to be aspirational for our young people and seek to be pushing those boundaries continually going forward. Councillor Reid.
If we convert percentages into people, a fall of 1% means how many people?
I would be guessing, Councillor.
It's less than 10, isn't it?
Well, a year group is about 1,800 pupils. So not all of that 1,800 pupils are doing hires, probably about a little over half of them. So you're not talking a huge number, but and you're talking about a huge number, maybe still getting 3 hires but not getting 4. So it's not that.
If it were to tumble by 4 or 5, I think one would have concern. But one could be several people are off ill that particular day.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, just for people to be aware of, is that if we look at any of these tables, 2017, 2018 and 2019, the pupils that we're looking at in 2019 are different individuals from those that were in the 2018 cohort. And as an ex-teacher, and you can speak to any teacher, teachers will tell you, my 4th year this year is outstanding, my results are going to be tremendous. And they are. And then next year they might say, my 4th year this year isn't going to do quite as well as last year's group. And we're not measuring like against like. So it's aggregate information. You could look at trends, which is why it's nice to say that's the best results Falkirk ever had last year. But it's never going to be a continuous line going up and up and up. It's going to be a saw blade.
Yes, I have relatives who are teachers. They keep telling me that about cohorts. Oh no, it's not year 3 again. Oh, I wondered if our newcomers have any comment on the exams. Ryan, Beth, Siobhan, you've probably gone through them this year. Were they easier or harder, or did you find curriculum for excellence? You're the generation that's been the guinea pigs. So, any comments to make? No. Did you find them all easy then? Okay. Right. Could I ask a question about the report that's to come? We tend to dwell on the people who succeeded, who were most successful. What about the people who were not so successful? Even though you have figures 95% positive, what's happening to the 5%?
Well, that is included within that report. What that report indicates is the total attainment, achievement of children at the point that they leave school. So it aggregates what's called their latest and best and awards a number of points for that. So for example, if I do National 5 mathematics and I get an A pass, then I've got a number of points. If I leave school at the end of 4th year, that's the number of points that show. If I stay on and I do the higher, and then I do the advanced higher, the points that we count are the points that I get for my advanced higher, but we don't add in the points that I got for my higher, or indeed my National 5. So what it tells us is information about each and every child at the point that they leave school, what have they attained, and separately we've got information and data about school leaver destinations. To pick up on your point about the 5% that don't go into a positive destination, that's not to say that they haven't also achieved. It might be that they haven't gone into a positive destination, but it might not mean that they don't have any kind of qualification. They may well have, because I mean there are actually some people, young people, that don't want to do anything after they leave school, and they might later.
And some presumably do a gap year as well.
Indeed, indeed.
Okay, are we happy to agree the report? Okay, thank you. Item 11 is Falkirk Community Learning and Development Annual Update and Action Plan. Mark's going to take it.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of the report that's in front of you is to outline progress that CLD partners have been making in terms of the CLD Action Plan for Falkirk, which is 2018-2021. Members may recall that last year you approved the Falkirk CLD Action Plan, the 3-year action plan, and you agreed to receive this update after that. The action plan responds to the regulations for CLD in that partners in Falkirk have to assess the need for community land development and develop an action plan to meet the needs that have been assessed. Within Falkirk, the action plan consists of 15 priority actions, and what I'm going to share with you is some of the actual progress that's been undertaken on those action points. So if I can take you to point 4.2, there's examples here of where progress has been made. And first of all, I'll talk about the one that's about improving individuals' core skills and employability skills, which is priority action 4. And what we're asking partners to do is to reduce the number of 16 to 24-year-olds who are not in education, employment and training. And a range of partners have been working with schools and others to develop service provision that target those young people. And examples that I've put there is Link Academy, which is Link Housing's academy based in Graham's Road. They've got a couple of programmes which is called Step On and Step It Up, where young people have the opportunity to develop their confidence, self-esteem and employability skills, and that hopefully lead to gaining an SQA qualification and lead them to moving into employment. The overall statistics in terms of young people getting a positive destination that these partners and schools are contributing to has increased from 94% to 96% during the time, and the participation measure, that's those that are sustaining their positive destination, has increased from 92.4% to 94.6%, so there's been a significant increase there. And these are young people who are particularly managing the transition from school to the world of work, training and further education, a bit of a challenge. So it's a very positive story there in terms of that. There's still work to be done, but it's very positive. The next one is Priority Action 6, which is the partners will develop a range of diverse CLD interventions aimed at supporting vulnerable people into work. This is mostly targeting adults and adults with significant barriers, multiple barriers to gain employment. And it's very much about recognising that some of these adults have been unemployed and workless for a considerable period of time, and the work is very much focused on their journey towards employment, and it's sometimes small steps. So in the paper there it outlines a number of the types of courses that are on offer for people to develop their skills so that they can get back into the labour market. It particularly highlights the work of the WEA, who run a number of work clubs and employability groups across the council area, where 70% of the participants have achieved a positive destination. That's significant. When we mean a positive destination for those adults, we're talking about moving on to volunteering to build their confidence, further training, further education, and moving into employment. 1 in 4 of the people secure employment after 5 months of being on the course, which is a significant result, actually. The next priority action 14, which is looking at improving health and well-being, where we're saying that will ensure, where possible, physical activity will be integrated within CLD activities. There was a recognition that a number of certain health and well-being issues, what we call tricky health and well-being issues, were not being realistically addressed, and the tricky issues are detailed there: smoking, pregnancy, physical activity in young people, physical activity in adults, breastfeeding and food issues. If I can particularly draw your attention to physical activity and adults, you'll be aware that Falkirk's been named as the best neighbourhood and walking and ramble area by Ramblers UK on their public vote. Active Forth and community walking programmes have seen an increase of 47% in the last year, which is a significant increase in referrals. And there has also seen a 51% increase in referrals to 45 plus age group. So adults are significantly getting involved in improving their physical activity. Moving on to Priority Action 15. Parents increase food skills of vulnerable people, increase opportunity for them to access affordable food choices and activities within local communities. This has been a significant area of growth in terms of the work that CLD partners have put their efforts into, and listed there is a range of partners who have been involved in this type of work. It's not exhaustive, but it's a range of them, and they've been working to ensure that vulnerable people have increased skills in terms of how they can cook food, etc., and have increased access to affordable food choices within the local community. It also details the summer food programme that was offered and the numbers of meals that were delivered and the number of young people and adults that participated within that in 2018. And they were the most vulnerable children, young people and families that we've got within our communities. You know, so certainly there's been an increase in where people can actually access food, and we had 6 particular sites where they could access food. That's now increased to 12 in the last year, so there's been a significant investment by CLD partners, including Forth Valley NHS, into providing opportunity for people to access food from community-based settings. Moving on to Priority Action 8, Falkirk CLD partners will work with communities to co-design and co-produce and deliver services. There's been a significant increase in this area as well. Some of the, CVS and CLD have had over 800 different inquiries looking for a variety of support from community organisations. That can be from governance through to financial support, legal advice, to how they attract funding. So a range of types of inquiries that have come in there. And that's going to grow, we think, this year again, significantly. And as a result of that advice, there's been certain groups that have taken on and looked at their own management of assets, and they're detailed there, from Woodlands Games Hall, the Sports Community Hubs in Cameron and Grangemouth, and Dawson Sports Development Association. At the bottom, it details that there's 9 community organisations have been involved in developing a consortium across Falkirk that particularly looks at food and a dignified response to food. And they have submitted a funding application to the Scottish Government, investing in communities fund to develop a food network that's based on community ladders where people can access food in their immediate communities. And hope they'll hear the outcome of that in the early part of November, whether they've been able to do that. That work around the 9 organisations and Falkirk's approach to providing a dignified response to food has been recognised by the Scottish Government, and we've had a number of staff and community reps go to speak to the Scottish Government and other local authorities about the approach that they're trying to take, and it's been very much welcomed as a different approach rather than the council just providing a grant funding to provide crisis food for people, which happens over the summer, which is very much welcomed. It's now about communities taking that responsibility on for themselves and providing for their own communities within their community as well. Other issues that detailed in the report is, what we're doing is bringing partners back together to review the CLD actions, the priority actions within the plan, and to get input into next year's plan going forward. What are going to be the priorities? And that event's going to happen in November this year, and it's going to involve community representatives as well. I know Robert's already spoken about the Forth Valley and West Lothian Regional Improvement Collaborative. Within the RIC in this area, we were the first RIC to form around about a CLD improvement plan, and that's been very positive for ourselves. And And I've certainly heard some of the comments that have been made. You know, certainly we've been able to share performance data across the RIC, which we never used to do, and that's enabled us to benchmark against each other. Sometimes because of the structures that we've got for community and development in each local authority, it's a bit of a challenge because it's like comparing apples and oranges, but there's been consistent approaches to where things are consistent. We are taking approaches to compare and contrast the data that we've got over the course of the last year. We've been involved in peer evaluation exercise. We were first in Scotland to begin to do that across the Regional Improvement Collaborative, where we had people from Falkirk Council going, for example, to West Lothian, Clackmannanshire and Stirling, and actually evaluating practice that was going on there. We had vice versa, other practitioners coming here. It was a great learning experience from staff. You know, we identified significant improvements, areas for improvement that we can make, both within Falkirk and across the Regional Improvement Collaborative, and that's been really, really good to share in our practice. And that's certainly been embedded here within Falkirk. We've got our own staff now doing peer evaluations across the authority as well, which has been particularly good. Certainly, the priorities going forward for the CLD RIC are looking at family learning. Again, this is where practitioners from Falkirk are now being invited to go across the Regional Improvement Collaborative to deliver training for other local authorities as well as those in the RIC. That's going to be part of this. And we're going to look at tracking and monitoring of young people's engagement in community activities. More so that schools can get an idea exactly what young people are involved in so that they can actually align their curriculums round about that. So that's some of what we're going to be doing there. I know it's the CLD action plan we're talking about here, but certainly this is informing one of the projects, which is the Council of Future project within the council, which is the Enabled Communities work stream, where it's got closer communities. This whole work is informing that, and that's going to be a significant bit of work going forward. Certainly the CLD action plan really has focused the minds of CLD partners on what it's actually doing, what we're actually doing, and really focused our efforts to really begin to address and mitigate the impacts of poverty, address inequalities, and that's what we're being targeted to do. And I think during the last year, the report here evidenced that we are beginning to really do that. Going back to the recommendations, you know, the recommendations were for you to note this report and to note the progress that's being made in the first year, and to welcome a report coming back next year. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Alexander.
Yes, Convener, I've got to give notice I'm going to be very positive in this particular report. I apologise in advance for that. But this is a very positive report, irrespective of which we read it, and it's to be welcomed. The impact that the community education can have is phenomenal in terms of our communities. And when we look at, for example, in the middle of page 96, the outcome with regards to the young people who are in employment, the increase in that figure alone is worthy of consideration for some kind of recognition. You recall, Convener, the term NEETs. That's not in employment, education or training. Thankfully, it's no longer in use. But I remember when we took office in 2001, the percentage of the population of the young people leaving school at that time who were within that category was 31%. You know, we're now down to a level where we're not finished by any manner of means. There has to be a target of zero in terms of the number of young people within that category. The figures contained within that paragraph are absolutely phenomenal when you compare what we had just a few years ago. And that again, let's be welcome, Convener, and no bones about it. This is an excellent story, and it's a story of corroboration and collaboration in relation to the sharing of workloads. Because when we look at this particular report and we compare and we look at other aspects and other departments within Falkirk Council and other sections, I'm particularly thinking of the employment training unit and the impact that they have, the close collaboration with community education has helped bring about the position we're in today. And I think it's appropriate, because I know she's leaving next week, but it's appropriate, I think, at this point in time to publicly recognise the role that Pamela Smith has had in the process. She's going to the Improvement Commission, which Improvement Service, which is their gain, is our loss, hopefully temporarily, because she's on secondment. But I do think that we need to recognise the role of Pamela and her section in the delivery of the figures that we have today. And again, I'm heartened by the fact that these groups are working together and knitting together, and we're seeing a joined-up approach to dealing with youth unemployment and poverty as well. Both of them are one which we're making significant progress with, and one where we hope we can make significant progress in the relatively near future. So with that, Convener, I formally move the recommendations contained within the report, congratulate the section, and look forward to continued improvement, because that's always the game. We're never satisfied. We're always looking for continuous improvement. And I'm quite sure with the leadership that we have at the moment, in terms of both the officers and yourself, Convener, as well as Adana when she gets back, that we'll see that continuous improvement, and that will be recognised in an equally positive, or if not more positive, report this time next year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alexander, Councillor Merton.
Indeed, I would echo Councillor Alexander's words. I think in particular the plan and the ability for us to have a look at project examples on the plan in section 4 gives us that overview of how the priorities which we are setting are actually being delivered, how they're realised. You know, it's all very well to have our overall objectives and our role priorities, but it can be quite difficult for us to imagine how those gaps are being filled in across the council in different ways. So I really welcome the format of the report and the breaking it down. In that way, I think what strikes me is that although we've obviously spent a lot of time this morning talking about education, and we talk about what's happening in our schools, in terms of the learning in our community, that starts from not just birth but pre-birth, all the way through, and is actually, you know, through to our older adults that we're assisting, whether that's into education or further work. I note the support that's been given to the breastfeeding community, particularly the big global action that took part in the Kelpies around the Helix area. And I think that it's an illustration of how, like with the walking awards and the rambling awards, communities need to see something as normal. They need to see other people doing it very often before they're able to engage themselves, or they're able to feel that it's a normalised thing. And I remember when my children were younger and doing a lot of research into different aspects of breastfeeding, about how important, when we're looking at improvements to public health and improvements to poverty further down the line, that actually encouraging breastfeeding and having an environment where people felt that was something which could be spoken about at committees and all the rest, and done in local parks without any taboo around it, was very, very important. So I think it's great to see that right from pregnancy, breastfeeding, and obviously everything that we are doing through early years and into our positive destinations when people are leaving school, that continuous adult education, it's there. I think one of the things that we've probably all as local ward members been involved in, certainly for myself, an increased amount of community participation as we go through the stages of community empowerment. And I would say that very much the team have been on hand to talk about the food programmes, or whatever it is, the directions that our communities want to take their involvement in a supportive way rather than in a lecturing or prescribing way, and allowing our communities to lead, but clearly our action plan and what we've set out there is being addressed. So I think that there's always more to do, and there's always ways that can be improved on, but the format that we've got here enables us to see certainly and scrutinise. So it's a good report and I welcome it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Colley.
Yes, I'll be brief. First of all, the UK Best Neighbourhood for Walking, fantastic. And I think the increase in the referrals to community walking is very good as well. I think members will note the from the table with the very small writing, the appointment of community link workers, and I think from the Health and Social Care Partnership, the IJB, the work in ensuring that people have other options. You know, health and social care are not just about medicine and the delivery of services. It's about enabling people to be part of their communities, to access activities that improve their life, that improve their well-being, and then in effect can affect their health and their mental and physical health as well. So I think it's a fantastic report. I think I look forward to progress as it goes along, but I think it's very clear what can be achieved and the difference that can be made with joint working, you know, across all services, across a range of different sectors, but also with our communities and with the individuals who are affected. So well done.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Nimmo.
Yep, thanks, Convener. Mark, what if anything has been the impact with budget cuts on your action plan? Was there anything that actually fell off the bottom of the page that you've not been able to take forward?
Based on the action plan that was agreed last year, there's been no negative impact from budget cuts. I think that the action plan itself gave a different focus and a sharpening of focus for community and development partners, which the action plan represents, and that's really enabled them to think about the resource that they've got and how they actually target on those who would most benefit from it, and that's what the guidance requested from us to do. So in terms of actually the budget cuts that we faced in that certainly the services faced in 2018-19, there's been no significant impact on that.
What's the latest regarding youth clubs? Have we lost a lot of them over the last year, 18 months?
Youth clubs that have been directly delivered by the CLD service. Well, certainly there's been a review undertaken over the summer and a number of them have closed, but that's not down to budget cuts. That's down to actually thinking the provisions not required in that area anymore, so they've combined them into one youth club, but the provision's still there, but it's not there's one youth club there, one youth club there. They've actually combined them both together, so that there's still being a provision for the young people.
How many have we lost then?
Three the three over the whole authority.
Okay.
That's amounts to about 6 hours a week.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Okay, Councillor Munro.
Thank you. It's a very full report and with 15 priority actions. I wondered, being a newbie, how many people work within CLD?
It's not just the CLD service, Councillor. It's a very good question, though, because a lot of people go to me, is it your service that's delivering these 15 priority actions? No, it's not. It's a range of partners. Some of them have been listed there on the page. It's up to 35 to 40 partners who are involved in delivering the CLD approach across the council area. So within the CLD service, we have approximately, in terms of CLD workers, 20 FTE, community and development workers working, but they'll be working with partners from Bernardo's, Aberlour, community sector partners in terms of community organisations that are delivering services as well. So there's a range of practitioners involved. To give you an example, one aspect of community and development is working with young people. They reckon there's something like near enough 470 volunteers working, delivering youth work across the Falkirk Council area. That can be from uniformed organisations like the Girls Brigade, Boys Brigade, to Scouts, to very informal youth work that's going on is delivered by adults. So the actual workforce is pretty big for Falkirk Council area in terms of volunteers.
So you're facilitating
Yes.
the voluntary sector in a sense.
Yeah, and that's very much what the CLD action plan are about. It's not about the council per se and them having a service to deliver CLD. It's about how they enable and facilitate community learning development to be delivered.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
Yes, one of the objectives mentioned is to provide an adequate CLD service over the area. Are we achieving that?
Based on the last inspection, the inspectors would say we are providing that.
But what do you say, though?
The difficulty is, Councillor, that, or the challenge is, what defines adequate?
Exactly. What does define adequate?
It's not detailed within the guidance at all. There's no figure provided, nothing like that. What they want you to do is to identify the needs and you to identify the ways that you're going to meet the needs. It's not to say you have to meet every need, but you have to be aware of the needs you're not meeting and how you're going to meet them in the future if you can.
Is it the case that the literacy and numeracy classes have ceased?
Sorry, I didn't pick that one up.
Is it the case that the literacy and numeracy classes for adults have ceased?
No, they're not. No, that's not the case at all. No.
In
no.
the summertime, they didn't cease?
There's still the same level of provision there as what there was last year. Yeah.
The same provision as last year?
Same provision. It's got the same number of classes are available to play, and same number of classes and places are available this year as what there was last year and the preceding year.
Okay. What I find disturbing, and it's not a local problem, is the national problem of access to food. I mean, here we are the richest, one of the richest countries in the world, and there's not a boast in the report, but it suggests that it's a good thing that the number of food outlets has increased from 6 to 12. I just find that utterly disgusting that that should be the case. So how do we address that? I mean, it's a national problem. I mean, that didn't even take place in my granny's day, never mind my day.
I think it is one of the biggest challenges we're facing, certainly in the UK and in Scotland today. And it's alarming when you speak to some very vulnerable families, and particularly young people and children. You know, certainly, I've witnessed and spoke to a couple of children in the last couple of years where, at the summer, you know, I was actually saying to them, you'll be quite glad it's the school holidays. I was trying to get in a chat with them about that, and they were saying no. And I'm like, all right, why? They said, because we've not got our school meal. The school meal was one of the only things that they had in that day to eat. And certainly the council's been fantastic in providing money and resource so that we can target the most vulnerable families to provide them with food. However, going forward, we need to be thinking differently about the whole concept of food, because a lot of people don't want charity. They don't want to access food banks. You know, they don't necessarily want a handout of food. They want to be able to get a food themselves, and that's what we're hearing back from families. And that's why we're developing the community larder scheme with community organisations as well, so that they can actually recycle food that might well have been wasted and target it on families who would most benefit from it. But these families would have to pay a membership fee every week to join the ladder to access the food, so they're actually paying something and they get 5 days food for that money they're paying, which is a different way of thinking about it, and we're trying to move to different ways of providing access to food. I've not got the silver bullet or the golden bullet, the answer to solving food poverty per se, but all I can say is that we're trying to do different things across the council area that will improve things for people.
Yeah. I may say it's a very good report. Don't take anything I'm saying in the way of criticism. It's hopefully helpful, but I just find food banks disturbing. Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with that, but I think we have to acknowledge that one of the biggest challenges for people is poverty, and welfare reform has had a significant impact on that. And while you know that's not the sole impact that's created food poverty, it has contributed. But I think, again, this is a wee bit of a snapshot. We need to look at the other things that we actually are doing locally around trying to address food poverty, and the big dig, the community food growing, on all of that is a combination of looking to address issues around mental health and active, healthy lifestyles, but enable people to have access to fresh fruit and vegetables, etc., that they can have in order to address some of that issues around the food poverty. But it is a real challenge. It's one that we shouldn't be congratulating ourselves on, but acknowledge that it is there and we have to address it, and the fact that we have as many outlets as we can in order that people can access within their community, because some of the restrictions and the ways that food banks have had to set themselves up has actually also become a bit of a barrier. And we need to be able to give people options to be able to meet their needs. And remember, it's not always people who are out not working or out of work that are in food poverty. We have families who have at least one person working within their home that are in food poverty as well. Okay, any other? Sorry, Reverend Rowell.
I just wondered, as a local church, we've done a number of community initiatives to help people. We obviously run the normal kind of children's youth work, but we've also done mental health training and rolled some of it as a very good organisation called Christians Against Poverty that have helped people with budgeting, and we've done some of that provision in some of the local schools. And I've also tried to do living skills through Kerseybank Community Centre, but we really don't have a lot of links with CLD itself. I think it's a great report, but we're kind of detached, but would be like to be more part of what's going on. We've also tried to do stuff for school meals. We had a meeting with the director a few years ago, and part of the response to that was that the food bank itself, we were on the startup organisation, started Falkirk Food Bank, and so Falkirk Food Bank actually provides for anybody that wants a meal over the school period, as you well know, over the school. We try to do something as a local church and put on meals and a programme for children. We found it difficult to access the parents. We tried to do it through schools with a mixed response. Some schools were keen to help us with that. Some of the social work department were keen to help us, but it didn't have the success that it did. So there's some things that as a local church we would be able to contribute to some of the needs here, but there isn't like that strong partnership. And there's probably other organisations like ourselves within the community. And I just wondered how we could further help the overall need by offering what we do and partnering better with CLD.
Sounds like a conversation's needed there, Mark.
Yes, certainly. I think you're right. We've worked with a number of churches over the last few years where the church themselves have put on provision for food and over the summer, and they've had mixed success, to be honest with you. And that's not down to their approach or their commitment to doing it. They're very committed to doing it. However, we've certainly seen a difference. If you take, for example, what's happening in the Cameron area, you've got Cameron Community Project working with Cameron Juniors. You've got the local church working together, and they're providing it. So it's a consortium of people coming together, and they're able to share the workload of that and be open at more times that's suitable to the people that they're there to provide the services to. So I think it is about collaboration and partnership working together. But I'll have a conversation with you about how we can support that.
Another thing is that for example, Stennismuir Football Club are doing walk-in football and different things like that, and they're partnering with the hub at Larbert High School. So as far as recreational and physical exercise, there are other organisations that are doing things as well that are maybe not able to be all mentioned in the report, but there are a number of local good things going on, certainly in our area.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if everyone is done, can we approve the report? Okay, thank you. First of our inspections, it's a summary of HMI inspections. Robert?
Thank you, Convener. We agreed some time ago that the process by which we would consider school inspection reports and indeed care inspectorate inspections of nurseries was that we would provide a summary on an annual basis. So that's the report that we have here. And it was also decided that should there be an unsatisfactory report, that report would be referred to the scrutiny committee. So The report in front of you today does two things. One, it provides a summary of the recent inspection activity that either the service or schools have been involved in, be that contributing to some national survey type inspections, which are outlined in paragraphs 3.8 and 3.9 and indicated at the table in 3.11, which is schools that have been involved in inspection activity that has gone on to be aggregated up into national reports about the readiness for empowerment agenda. We also have a relatively small number of schools that were inspected just as individual schools. So we had 2 primary schools and 1 secondary school, and we had 15 nursery schools inspected. But the important thing within this paper is that previously we referred to the scrutiny committee for the lowest 2 evaluations, and now we're asking committee to agree that unless you get excellent, very good or good, that the report would be referred to the scrutiny committee. Currently, if you get satisfactory, it doesn't go. And I'm suggesting, in terms of the ambition around continuous improvement, that if you don't get good, then we would refer any individual report to the scrutiny committee. If I could refer to the appendix on page 111, that details all the inspection activity that has been that any of our schools have been involved in over the course of the last year, and then it goes on to indicate all the inspections that our early learning centres have been involved in. And you'll see that across the board, we are getting a lot of excellence and very goods. But if I could draw your attention on Appendix 1, Avonbridge Primary School in February 2019, they had evaluations of good, satisfactory, satisfactory and good. So going forward, the Avonbridge report would have been referred to the scrutiny committee rather than currently it wouldn't have been the case. I'll stop there and take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Happy to move the report, convener. It comes back to we're not prepared to stand still. We're always looking for improvement, and we'll concentrate on those areas that require improvement. Overall, I think the report is relatively positive. I think drawn comfort from a number of goods and excellence, and very goods that there are. So it makes sense to concentrate the time and resources onto the schools which and the early learning centres that need that attention.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener. I'm happy to second the report. I think that broadly, as Councillor Alexander said, it shows that we have got excellent establishments and good results across the board. However, I think the Director is right that in order to set our intention, that our focus is on always improving and always moving in an upward direction and not sitting on our laurels, that we agree the recommendations within the report, and that will send that signal, as well as the practical side of the report, that's what we expect from our establishments. But it's a fairly straightforward report and easy to follow, and not in an appendix which has got tiny writing, I think, from the previous one, so easier for us to analyse in a committee setting. So I welcome that also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Convener. Just looking at the Appendix 1 and the inspection of the schools, there's 2 there that were follow-up inspections, and it says for one of them progress, significant progress. That doesn't really tell me anything, because we don't know exactly where they started. If they started as abysmal and progressed to awful, they're still awful. Have we got an idea? This is not really, it doesn't tell us where they've got to, which is really what we want to know. In the case of, for example, Bowness has made significant progress, but has it made enough progress to get to a position where they're not going to find themselves with a repeat inspection? And Slamanan, we know there has been a problem there, has only just made progress. So I don't find this table actually gives us the information we're looking for.
I understand they were discussed extensively at the scrutiny committee, along with the action plans, but we'll get some more details for you.
The Bowness Academy significant progress, that once you have the inspection and they use the evaluative language and they give you the grades excellent, very good, and so on and so forth. When they begin to get involved in follow-up activity, they then use the language significant progress and progress. I can tell you that HMI will not be paying any further follow-up visits to Bowness Academy. So, to use the language, they are signed off. So they don't have any further remaining concerns about Bowness Academy. Slamanan, HMI are still engaged and they will come back and do a follow-up, but they have recognised that progress has been made since the date of the original inspection, but they will return and that will be subject to a subsequent report.
Thanks. Just on an issue around the reports themselves, I appreciate now that we have agreed that it's just a summary that would come here. I'm just echoing the views of the convener of the scrutiny committee, who feels that whilst we're only dealing with the bad reports that come in at this committee, there is a view that all the reports should come to this committee, or the outcome of these committee, in that you can then celebrate the achievement of a school within your particular ward. And I say that's a view of some of my colleagues, that perhaps we should also be seeing the outcome of the good reports on the schools, if not to this committee, but at least the copies of that to the individual councillors, depending on the ward the school's in. Comment?
Falkirk Council, this committee, took a view some years ago not to bring each and every report, and thereafter decided that what would it do about reports that were less than, that weren't good, and the decision then was that they go to scrutiny. In other places, all reports go before a similar committee. It would be certainly easy for us to ensure that as and when reports are published, that we circulate copies of these reports to local members, and I'll undertake to do that as of today.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful.
I think that would be appropriate, because ultimately the focus has to be on ensuring that the schools that aren't performing well are getting the support in order to move on, and well, you know, there's always going to be an eye on the reports. They will come forward. The service will see them, and if everything's going well and they are progressing accordingly, then I don't think there's any need for members to spend detailed time looking at the better performing, but definitely to look to making sure that those that aren't performing as well as they should be getting the support that they need. Councillor Nimmo.
Convener, I'm just wondering if it might be more appropriate for these reports just to be included with information bulletin.
That was my thought, that might well be a way of dealing with that. But I'll leave that with the director to decide the best way forward. Okay. Anything else in relation to the HMI inspections? Happy to agree. Okay. Move now on to the non-educational functions of the Children and Young People's Executive. I always knew this name was going to be a problem. And the first item is around the Attainment Challenge, National Strategic Partnerships, Young Scott Looked After Children Project. And Mark, thank you.
I'll do the first part of the report. My colleague Vivian Thompson will do the second part, and I'll bring it together at the end. This report outlines an area of work that we want to bring to your attention, which is the fantastically titled Scottish Government's Attainment Challenge National Strategic Partnership Young Scot Looked After Children's Project. Whew, bit of a mouthful to get through, but that's what it's called. In December last year, we were approached by the Scottish Government and Young Scot to see if we'd be interested in getting involved in the phase 2 of this work stream. And because of a number of things that have been developing over the last couple of years, particularly the Champions Board, and this was a key area of work for the Champions Board, we said yes. What does it involve? They explained it to us, and they basically said there could be a maximum of £100,000 that would support some work around looked after and care experienced young people. So we submitted an application and we were successful, and we are one of 3 local authorities to be part of phase 2 of this work stream. And I'll outline what it actually means, and I'll try and speak quite plainly in plain language what it means. What we're trying to do here is to provide health and well-being opportunities for care experienced young people, and that they can actually access a Young Scot card in the first instance, and using that Young Scot card they can access free travel for a period of time. They can access leisure and cultural services free as well, and they can get access to rewards and discounts across the Falkirk Council area as part of that. Now, why the Scottish Government and Young Scot particularly want to do that, they want to promote the use of the Young Scot card with care experienced young people, and they want, because they're one of the groups that they reckon don't take up the offer of a Young Scot card, and they want to incentivise the use of the Young Scot card, and hence the rewards and discounts. So what we've done was we've had discussions with First Bus, Transport Scotland, and a variety of other partners about getting free transport for care experienced young people, and we've managed, not free transport, we've managed to get a discounted rate on transport, and that will commence on the 30th of September for up to 50 young people in the first phase of this project. And then we've been negotiating with Falkirk Community Trust to get free access of leisure and cultural services, and they've agreed that they'll do that as well as part of the Young Scot card, and that the young people will swipe that. And the reason that they're using the Young Scot is to reduce the stigma for them, and it's very much about improving their health and well-being, access to services, and we want to do that. We've done significant work with young people on what type of rewards and discounts they would like to see, so we've consulted with the young people, and we've got staff actually liaising with the variety of businesses in the town centre and businesses across the Falkirk Council area to provide discounts and rewards for the young people as well. So we've actually made significant progress on that. I'll hand you over to Vivian now, and Vivian will talk you through the corporate and parent aspects of it.
Yeah, I mean, members will be aware that as part of our duties under the Children and Young People Act 2014, we need to have a corporate parenting plan, and that's been in place for us in Falkirk over the last 3 years, and all that Mark has outlined is really part of what we were committing to do as part of our corporate parenting responsibilities. So in our current plan, we've got 3 priorities, one of which was the development of the Champions Board, one of which is raising awareness of our corporate parenting duties and responsibilities, and the third is the development of a family firm approach, and some of that has been reported to members in other forums. Because the current project that Mark's just outlined links so closely to the Champions Board, we've outlined in section 4.3 just some of the background to the Champions Board, and it seems particularly appropriate that we're bringing this report, the first meeting that we have a care experienced young person round the table. So the Champions Board was formally launched in September 2017. It's a way of Falkirk's looked after children and young people having a voice in how they're cared for. It's an opportunity for them to influence policy and practice that impacts on them and to make a difference. The group meets 4 times a year. We have 5 care experienced young people on the board, and membership also includes chief executive, members of the 4 main political parties, Children's Commission Leadership Group, and a number of other key corporate parents. We have a very active participation group who meet every week and do a whole range of different things, and one of the parts of that action plan is about what the barriers are to care experienced young people managing to just meet their potential. the priority from the young people is mental health and the impact that poor mental health has on them. So the attainment project that Mark has just outlined there, and particularly some of the bits round about leisure opportunities, access to swimming, to these kind of things, we know that that makes a massive difference to young people's mental health. So it very much fits with the priorities that we have for, for the Champions Board, and some of that is just outlined in section 4.3. Section 4.4 just notes some of the funding round about the Champions Board. We've been funded by the Life Changes Trust for the first 3 years, which we're very delighted by. And we also were successful in getting funding through Life Changes Trust for a project called Relationships First, which is about how you look at culture change, and members of the Champions Board and of the Leaving Care group are both involved in that. The aim of that project is outlined at the end of section 4.4. Corporate parents in Falkirk Council are better able to love and care for care experienced young people in the way that they would for their own family, and that's very much the thrust of what we're looking to do. All of this fits within the context of Closer to Home, which is our children's service strategy. This is perhaps the kind of boring bit, the kind of corporate parenting context that this is all happening in, but it does illustrate that that is the means by which we can access money such as what Mark has just outlined.
Thank you, Vivian. I know the grant was £100,000 and it's a pilot project. It finishes up on the 31st of March next year, and we are expected to, based on the budget proposals that's been put into the Scottish Government, will spend that money on this project. Vivian spoke there about young people accessing health and leisure services. You know, it's not just about the access. There's a pot of money there so that if there's a barrier, i.e. the young person hasn't got any kit, training shoes or whatever, we can actually purchase them to enable them to do that. That's part of what the money is there to fund as well. The question that we've got, and we'll always have as this project goes along, is how do we sustain it after the 31st of March? Those that local authorities that participated in the Phase 1 project have found ways of sustaining it, and there's a sharing group being set up that will meet in late October that will come back and share a lot of how they began to do that and the change in practice that they began to do. So we'll steal some ideas from there, unashamedly. We'll take ideas from there and we'll come back and share it with a future report that will come back to yourselves to talk about what the impact has actually been. In terms of impact, we've also put part of the budget where young people themselves will be doing the evaluation on what the impact has had on them and on other people. So we'll find ways that they can actually come back and share that with you as well, and you get a real human voice of what the project's been about and about the impact it's had on them individually. So you get that back. So in terms of recommendation, I can take you back to that, to note the report, and then to request that the Director of Children's Services brings back a report that talks about the impact and the evaluation of the project at the end of it.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Before I bring in Fiona, I'm going to put Siobhan on the spot. And I'm going to ask her just to maybe say a couple of words about what this would mean to the young people locally, or care experienced young people, being able to have this fund, to be able to access it. If you just want to give me an idea of what...
It would mean a lot to them is that during their time in care they haven't really gotten anything, but getting that chance to go out and do stuff that they wouldn't really do would mean a lot to them. It would make them happier, more thingy. Active, and it just helps them with their daily life and everything, and it's just given them a lot more opportunities than they could have had if they didn't get it.
Do you think it would maybe help the transitions around, the journey through the care experience process, and being able to
definitely
to cope with that, and just make them a bit more resilient, perhaps?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Fiona.
I'm going to be very brief. I think it's fantastic we've managed to get this funding. I think the options put forward brilliant, and I think it's really important to be, transport can be a real barrier, and not just to get to somewhere, never mind the cost of actually accessing facilities. So I think the involvement of the Community Trust as well is brilliant. So I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of it, but fantastic and well done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Happy to second and to say the package for the Young Scot card looks absolutely fantastic, especially compared to the old Codgers Bus Pass.
I think that's called the Old Scot card.
And if anyone wants to swap, then feel free. Actually, it's not mine, it's the Laura's. Seriously though, this is an excellent package, and I think it's good that we've got the money, but it's even better that we've got the programmes that can gain the additional resources for us. The way that the Champions Board has been structured and set up, and the input from young people into it is fantastic. So I'll be brief as well. I'm happy to second the recommendations contained within the report, and to commend not just the young people themselves, although that is something that I really clearly want to do, but also to commend the department for the work that's been undertaken on that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to 19-1, Councillor Alexander. Has he ever been 19-1 by a member of his own party?
Oh yes, several times.
Yeah, this is definitely not my card, and also but I can see that you're still using the picture from 1997 that you used on all the other things. But no, I might come in later. But I just wanted you to withdraw your remark that as the next youngest member on the committee after our young people, it's definitely not my card.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nitma, I'm not sure how you follow that one.
Well, I'll try my best. It's obviously a great initiative, and it's something I welcome openly as well. I'm just wondering, is any of this £100,000 having to go to the Trust, or is the Trust providing access to the sports facilities free?
Falkirk Community Trust is providing access completely free to the young people.
Right.
So there's no money going to the Trust at all.
So we can use the £100,000 for something else and to
Yes,
benefit them?
that's right. Exactly.
Okay, Councillor Munro.
I would like to welcome this initiative. I attend the Champions Board, and I know full well that the young people were very proactive in making some of these choices and decisions that we see before us, and I'm sure they've got many more ideas for us in the future. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
It seems a silly question, but how do we know the 100,000 is going to be spent? It's led by demand, how many times you use the bus, how many times you go to the... Suppose the uptake is not what is expected, and we live with 20 or 30 grand at the end of the day.
Yes, I'll leave that to the experts who drew it up.
Just to say, Councillor Reid, I'll guarantee the £100,000 will be spent according with the projects that have been here and those that will be developed, guaranteed.
Yeah. I won't ask any further questions.
I think, just a final comment, I think attending the Champs Board and the clear demands that have been made, particularly of the corporate parents, I thoroughly do reckon that money will be used, because transport was seen very much as a barrier, particularly if you're not living within central Falkirk. If you're living in an outlying area, then getting in to meet up with your peers, your friends, and actually do activities was one of the biggest barriers that was raised by the Champs. So I'm sure they will look to utilise the fund as fully as possible.
So will the young people be alerted when there's a lot of money lying about?
I'm assuming that they will very quickly know about it and know how to access it. Okay, just very, Councillor Murtagh, briefly.
I've been told I already spoke about us, and that was a 19-1, so procedurally I still can. I think that as a new councillor coming in, obviously there are many things to learn, and one of them is our role as corporate parents, but I would definitely say that the statement about wanting the same for our care experience young people as what we want for our own children is certainly something which all members, I think, aspire to and very much want to have the practical measures in place, and this is a great initiative that we can see that it's part of that. As the parent of a teenager at the moment, I have no doubt that the money will also be spent either, but knowing that the challenges which are faced by our young people, although we talk about education and all the things, it's the health and well-being and the learning to survive in the adult world, which I think are probably the greatest challenges that some of us maybe forget. So I think something like this is so key, and it's great to see it here at the committee as a paper.
Okay, thank you. I assume we agree the report. Final item, which is the summary of the care inspections. Sarah.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of this report is to provide an overview of the performance of the regulated services within Children and Families Social Work Division. This report is provided to the Education, Children and Young People Executive on an annual basis. The Care Inspectorate regulates care services for people of all ages in Scotland. Its work includes registering services, inspecting and grading them, dealing with complaints, carrying out enforcement action when necessary, and helping services to improve. All inspection reports are public documents and are available to read on the Care Inspectorate website. Care services are registered and inspected to make sure that they conform to the law as set out in the Public Services Reform Scotland Act 2010. There are new health and social care standards which came into effect in April 2018. The new standards replace the old national care standards, and they're relevant to all health and social care provision. If a service isn't meeting these standards, then the Public Services Reform Act gives the Care Inspectorate powers to make sure that the services improve. The health and social care standards set out what we should all expect when using health, social care or social work services in Scotland. They seek to provide better outcomes for everyone, to ensure that individuals are treated with respect and dignity, and the 5 headline outcomes are noted at section 3.9 of this report. Section 4 of my report outlines considerations relative to all of the regulated services subject to Care Inspectorate scrutiny. Please note that at section 4.2 the reports have been published for both the fostering service and the adoption service. Good grades are celebrated and areas of learning are captured and addressed in action plans within each service team. To ensure consistency with school evaluation reporting arrangements, in addition to annual summary reporting to this executive, establishments receiving an evaluation of adequate or lower are being recommended to be presented to scrutiny, as previously outlined by Robert. To conclude, scrutiny and improvement of services is an essential element of service delivery, and it's welcomed. As we move forward, Children's Services is strengthening our approach to self-evaluation and continuous improvement. We're building skills and experience as we further embed the health and social care standards. Appendix 1 to this report provides a summary template of the grades that have been awarded to the registered services. Appendix 2 provides an overview of the 6-point scale that's used by the Care Inspectorate to describe the quality that they see. And I refer members back to the recommendations outlined at section 2. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Crawley.
Thank you very much. I welcome the report. It's very interesting. I think the results are very good, and particularly pleased to see around the care and support and staffing. That these are all good, very good and excellent. I think that's a testament to the work of the staff and the staff in developing continuous improvement, always trying to do better, and I think that should be noted. I do know, and around some of the things there's a couple of adequates, and I do welcome the further scrutiny of these, because I think we all have a duty to try and make our services the Falkirk services. I would like to, that are the best in Scotland. With that, I'd like to formally move the report.
Thank you. So Alexander.
I will second the report and reserve the right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions in relation, or we're happy to approve the report? Agreed. Okay, thank you.